Hey folks, it's me, it's Andy. It's been, Data Bytes Free was a long, long time ago. I was talking about the idea of interoperability of government data 6 years ago. We've got it right, we've done it, whoop whoop. Since then, I have moved to work for FullFact. So can I just get a quick show of hands? How many people in the room have heard of FullFact? Oh, you are my people, thank you very much. Love this room, don't need to talk too much about who FullFact are, but I will just do a little quick tour of who we are. So FullFact, we're a fact-checking organization. We're an independent organization, we're a charity with a cross-party set of trustees who govern our work. And we fact-check information that we see online. And we're also a team of technologists, and I'm talking a little bit about what that looks like from the technology side because my job title is pretty cool, Head of AI for FullFact, a lot of excitement in there. And we try to use technology to support the processes of fact-checking. And we do that for our fact-checkers based in the UK, and we also do that for fact-checkers around the world. So this map on the right-hand side here is where fact-checking organizations use the technology that we built in FullFact. And you see quite a lot of organizations in Africa and across the Middle East are working in that. And that means we've been using AI in some quite challenging environments. We've been using it in South Sudan and Democratic Republic of Congo, interesting and very difficult, challenging environments. And there's a whole other talk I'll do one day about the use of AI and the fact that it can be quite practical in this thing of just helping people workflow efficiencies, not the most sophisticated AI you'll ever seen, but stuff that works and makes a difference and helps people in the work that they're undertaking. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the fact that bad information hurts democracy. As Gavin said before, I like to have slides with big sweeping statements on them. And so we could spend a long time trying to unpack this. But I think about bad information it can be in the individual things, but it can be stuff that stacks up. And I mean, bad information can hurt democracy in terms of if people decide that they don't trust the process of democracy or it is pointless voting, you start to get some very dire consequences. And so fact-checking sometimes can be seen as sort of the triviality of the small statements. And I think of it as being the small statements that build up to the big statements that can be about opinions and processes that affect at a very societal level. And so I'm a bit biased, obviously. I work for a fact-checker. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think fact checks are just a really interesting piece of content and how they fit into the web, because I absolutely love talking about the web. And so a fact check. For a long time, fact checks are 600 to 800 words, and they're published on websites. And there are fact checkers around the world, and we talk about independent fact checkers. These are people who are accredited fact checkers. We have to go through a process where we're accredited and allowed to be a fact checker, and we publish this content. And there's normally a specific claim, and there's a conclusion that we come to, and there's a bunch of working out that goes into that. And the idea of a fact check is it's something that you can follow along at home. We are not telling you what to think. We are saying, here is a conclusion that someone has come to. Here's how we came to that conclusion. You can check it all out yourself. You don't have to believe what we're saying, but this is the best of our abilities. But also, because of the beautiful thing that is the web, those fact checks don't just get published on our website. They go into lots of different places as well. And that's because of the wonderful world of open standards. So every fact check that is written by FullFact, we also have a JSON sidecar that goes alongside that where we have a bunch of metadata. And we follow a schema standard. It's called claim review. And this is the recognized standard for how content can move around associated to fact checkers. And that means that on a Google search result, fact checks appear as a slightly different content type. It's quite subtle, but rather than a normal SERP that you might see, there's a specific piece of information here. So there's a claim, who made that claim, and a fact check. And so we can see that it's being checked by somebody. And that just helps us in the way that we appear quite high in the rankings, and also just shows that it's slightly different content types. And also the same kind of thing happens on YouTube. And the same kind of thing happens on Meta products as well. So there's this kind of interface where fact checks appear into these other content surfaces. And I think that's really interesting for us because fact checks get seen by a lot of people. In the work that we do, we have a number of people who come to our website, and that's fantastic. But the vast majority of people who consume our content are doing so off-platform. They're doing it on other people's surfaces. And large tech companies aren't great about giving really granular information about how their products are used, but from Meta's point of view, they publish some open numbers as part of the Digital Services Act in Europe, hundreds of millions of times. Google products, the last time they published some numbers about fact checks, billions of times fact checks are seen across these surfaces. And I think that's really interesting because it's about data. It's about how the data moves around, and we are publishing data with our own descriptions, and that it's been used by platforms and services in different ways that we don't always totally get to control. So, of course, because I'm a nerd, I didn't say that at the start, but it's probably all assumed, right? I think about this stuff quite a lot. I've been thinking about how to approach what that could look like with more detail. And so I've been working with a bunch of fact checkers around the world on a different schema for what information could look like. And in the sort of teal group we have on one side here is the information we broadly capture, but we've been trying to do some more enrichment of that. And so now when you look at full fact checks, and if you look at the source, you'll see that we use Wikidata identifiers all through our work. So we're not talking about sort of just names, we're talking about specific things. We include the Wikidata IDs, so you have a very good canonical representation of information. And we started to think about also the fact that not every fact check is equal. Some fact checks are about different people and have different levels of harm inside them. And we've been starting to think about how do you take something that could be quite subjective, the concept of harm, and try to codify that into our work. I've been doing some work with other fact checkers and some academics at Westminster University to think about what this could look like, about the idea of can we train and come to a consensus about the idea of how to capture things, about how harmful something is, how far it might spread, what kind of distortion is it, and what was the reason why someone was pushing this information? What were they trying to achieve in the world? Were they trying to get famous? Were they trying to change who you vote for? Were they trying to scam you out of money? And I think it's super interesting to think about what this stuff looks like, and also particularly what this looks like in a world where a lot of people are taking this content and training AI models from it. This is good canonical information that looks something close to the truth. Obviously, there are lots of other ways. People talk about this stuff a lot at the moment. There's the concept of community notes. We know that Twitter X use community notes, and we know that Meta are rolling out community notes in the US at some stage this year. Community notes, I think, are a brilliant thing. They can be really, really powerful, and the idea of sourcing stuff up from the crowd is a really useful thing. But also, I think fact checks are quite an important part of that. Maldita, an amazing fact checker based in Spain, did a bit of analysis of the domains that we used within community notes. And the top was X itself, but Wikipedia was second, and then fact checks were third in that list. And I think that's interesting because Wikipedia has 60 million or so pages. There are about 200,000 fact checks ever written. So in terms of their importance, they're sort of over-indexing in this world of information here. And so I think there is definitely something to be said for making sure that community notes and fact checks sit alongside each other. So I've been thinking about the fact that this is a web scale issue. There is a small number of fact checks, and I'm thinking about how do we describe that? How do we give the best information so those can be utilized by as many people as possible, as many products as possible, as much AI as possible? And I've got a data set, and I'm trying to work out who wants to talk to me about this data set. I've got some annotations of fact checks. I've got about 1,000 fact checks written by a globally representative group of people that have been really detailed annotations against them to try and make the most useful utility of data that we possibly have. And I'd love to chat to you. This is not my main thing, but this is just something I'm doing, a part of my work of just thinking about how can we make our content as useful as possible and do as much as we possibly can. So if you want to chat, my email address is pretty easy to work out. Drop me a mail, and I'd love to talk to you more. Thank you very much.